right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for logging on for the North Carolina Problem Gambling Program webinar. We have Allison here who's going to do our presentation. Again, just a couple housekeeping things. We have the chat box here. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, you can type them there, and once Allison gets to a good stopping point, we can address those. Survey link and certificates will be mailed after the webinar, and then documentation handouts will all be posted on our help desk. If you have any questions, you can send the NCTTA Center an email, reach out. Just want to give you guys a heads up. We had some issues with the sound on the video on Allison playing on her end, so when we get to that point in the presentation, we're going to switch over so that I can make sure you guys get to see that. But Allison, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and start.
Terrific. Thank you so much for having me here today. It'll be a pleasure to speak with you more about the Problem Gambling Program and Youth Problem Gambling. A little bit about me. I have my master's in social work and public administration, and my career has been mainly in community-based programming, mostly in prevention, and a little bit in treatment. I've become very passionate about prevention and problem gambling, and I've been in this role for over 2 years now, and I'm really excited to be able to share with substance use disorder prevention coordinators across the state, and maybe others that have joined on the call in other professions, but I'm just excited to be here with you today, so thank you. So today we're really going to be doing a little bit of Youth Problem Gambling 101, which means that I'm going to give you insight into some information that you can add into your toolkit about problem gambling to get a more in-depth understanding about signs and symptoms, types of gambling in North Carolina, youth problem gambling and gambling disorder and comorbidity. I would suggest that you attend a much longer training that we do, and actually that opportunity is coming up on March 5th and 6th at the Governor's Institute. And if you're interested in that training, you can reach out to me, and I believe Jamie and his team also have that information. But I'll have my email address available at the end of this presentation, so you can reach out to me if you'd like to get a more in-depth training in those areas. The deep dive that we will be taking today is something that I think is very important, an emerging trend, is understanding some of the online components of gambling and the opportunities that are being presented to youth via online in terms of games and how games and gambling are converging. And then I'm also going to give you the opportunity to learn about an evidence-based curriculum that we use here in North Carolina, and give you some feedback on how we use that and what our results from our pre and post surveys are. And then again, that much longer training on March 5th and 6th is actually a train-the-trainer session as well. So if you think that you're interested in learning this curriculum and would like to utilize it, there's a couple different opportunities. You can come to the train session and learn the curriculum and learn more about youth problem gambling. But there's also the opportunity to apply for a grant. So those opportunities are there, and I hope that you decide to take advantage of those. So that's what we're going to be learning about today. So to start off, it's really important to understand all the programs and resources the Problem Gambling Program offers. We were mandated legislatively when the North Carolina Education Lottery was created. So once the lottery was created, they knew that we needed to have treatment, outreach, education, and prevention throughout the state of North Carolina. But what it started out being was a toll-free helpline. And the state administrator at that time literally was the helpline. She got all the calls. And I will never forget what she told me about her first few calls she got, that she'd been in the social work field her entire career and still is today. And she was quite taken back by the devastation she heard on the other end of the line. And what she realized is that the financial aspect of gambling disorder creates that devastation that not only impacts the person living with the gambling disorder, but also family members. So there's a lot of shame and guilt associated with it. So our helpline has grown. We now have a website where you can also chat online, and then you can also text from your phone. And when you do all three of these components, you're actually talking to a master's level clinician. So to show you some of our helpline statistics, as you can see here, we get quite many calls every year, and many of them have nothing to do with actual gambling disorder. Sometimes it's a wrong phone number. Sometimes because our problem gambling helpline is on the back of lottery tickets and scratch-offs, some people actually call to see what the winning lottery numbers are. So, but what you can see here is the number of actual intakes per year is just under 600, and this was for the fiscal year 2019. And what this also shows you is that the referral source, how are people getting to us? As I mentioned, they're advertised on lottery tickets and scratch-off cards. We're found on the internet and then various other ways, including our website. The predominant reason that people call our helpline, there are three. One is lottery, and it's not surprising because lotteries are the most popular form of gambling worldwide. It's legal to advertise, market, and sell lottery products in many different ways, and in the state of North Carolina. People call for sweepstakes, and I'm going to dive in a little bit in sweepstakes here in a minute, but some of you may see them in your areas as copy and fax centers, or they may actually say sweepstakes on the front. And then there are the Cherokee casinos. So those are the three top reasons why people are reaching out to our helpline. And of course, there's other, which includes various other means of gambling. When people call our helpline, what we hope is that they are ready to reach out and see a treatment provider. And we have over 60 treatment providers throughout the state of North Carolina that we have trained, and they've applied, and they now are on our network. The first 5 sessions are approved immediately, and it's no cost to the problem gambler or loved one. And then an additional treatment sessions are approved up to 12. There is also a home-based 6-session phone model for those people that are not ready to see somebody face-to-face, or maybe they have some barriers to getting to a treatment provider. We also advocate for problem gambling screening tools or questions to be added to already existing screening tools. This is important because problem gambling is a hidden addiction. And many times, and as you'll learn in this presentation, you could be working with somebody or providing prevention services or treatment services and not be aware of the problem gambling. Our SureBet workshop series is where our treatment providers come to get trained, but also we encourage treatment providers throughout the state to come to these trainings. We do them several times throughout the year in different locations. It's very inexpensive and great CEUs, and it's a great opportunity to learn about gambling disorder. Our providers and myself, we get engaged in doing exhibits and speaking engagements and distributing problem gambling materials throughout the state. Very important to raising awareness. And then we have our prevention mini grants, which are grants to higher education and secondary education. And I will talk a little bit more about those towards the end of the presentation when I talk about Stack Deck. So I hope you all have your chat boxes open, because what I'd like to do is engage you each in a question. And several of these questions will appear throughout the presentation. It's very important before we even talk about gambling disorder is to understand and define gambling. So if you guys could take a moment and open up your chat boxes, and if you could just write in one-word answers, what do you think needs to comprise gambling? What are the components that need to be there for it actually to be gambling. So I'm going to give you each just a couple seconds here to think that through. And again, if you could open up your chat box and type those in, that'd be greatly appreciated. And as you're thinking about this, think about the gambling, that maybe you have engaged in or you see in your areas, or maybe that one time that you've gone to a casino. What were the things that were there? I'm seeing everyone is a little bit shy today. So,
Allison, some are actually typing into the question box, which that's totally fine too. We can see that.
okay.
And it is similar to the chat box, so that's totally fine. And I see some say risk,
Yes.
symptoms, money, prizes, again, money, reward, adults, flashing lights, betting. So some good responses here.
Oh, terrific. Oh, okay. I cannot see the question box, but I'm glad that there are people engaging. Terrific. And you all are doing a great job because, yes, to have these type of opportunities and or gambling, you have to have three different things. And consideration is when you're putting something down. Now, it doesn't just have to be money. It could be something of material value. So you're in hopes, so some kind of product or service that you're putting money down or something of material value on. And then there has to be that chance, that risk associated with where there are, winners will be determined. And then of course that prize. Now, the prize doesn't have to necessarily be money. It can be something of material value as well. And we're talking about youth and gambling. Many times it could be shoes, it could be maybe lunch money, it could be a lot of different things. So great job in engaging in that question. It's also really important to understand gambling history. Gambling has been around for thousands and thousands of years, from 20-sided dice being found in ancient Egyptian tombs to Native Americans playing traditional hand games, and then to, the history of the United States, where many gambling experts say we've been through three waves, from where we came and created lotteries to even put together the colonies to going west, where gambling establishments were established along the way, the routes of people moving west, to Nevada, who built their business initially on marriages and divorces, and then legalizing gambling. And many say today we are in the fourth wave of gambling, and really the largest expansion of legalized gambling in the history of the world. So as you can see here, there are only 2 states that are not involved in any gambling opportunities, Utah and Hawaii. But many states are engaged in a lot of different types of gambling opportunities. There's casinos, both Native American casinos, there's upwards of 450 plus, and then commercial casinos. A lot of state-run lotteries, which, like the education lottery, provide funds for the state. Interesting, there's a lot of online horse and dog racing, which I was actually very surprised to learn about, but the online component to that is fairly popular. In online gambling and sports gambling. So the types of gambling in North Carolina, the education lottery is, as mentioned, a very popular way to gamble. Sweepstakes, as I made note, are these establishments that have computers, laptops, and the games mimic a lot of casino-style games. However, winners are predetermined ahead of time. And they were made illegal through legislation. There have been several court cases. The sweepstakes software industry has pushed back and changed the game. And then recently, the court ruling was upheld again. So really, it's up to jurisdictions, sheriff departments, to make the decision to close down these establishments, and they're everywhere. And as I noted earlier, they don't even, well, first of all, they don't even advertise our helpline, and they don't even say that they're gambling. They believe that they're games of skill, and that the games are predetermined as well, because they have both of those things going on. And there is this larger debate about games of skill and gambling that continually goes on when we're talking about what is gambling and what is not gambling. However, regardless if they do not give to the problem gambling program, they do not advertise our helpline, but still people are calling. And a lot of these are in areas where people of lower socioeconomic means live, and it creates quite the devastation for people that go in and spend their entire paycheck at these places. Of course, we have 2 casinos in Cherokee. The one, there's Murphy, and then the one directly inside of Cherokee, which is going through a multi-million-dollar expansion right now. They're adding in new rooms, family-friendly activities, and a larger conference center. And many people still go out of state to participate and, gamble at casinos. Sports betting has occurred, it has been occurring for ages illegally. However, the Professional Amateur Sports Betting Act was struck down in 2018. Which means now that states each can decide if they're going to legalize sports betting. And collegiate sports betting has actually just been legalized only at the Cherokee casinos. I encourage you to attend some of our other webinars to get more of an in-depth understanding of the concerns around sports betting, especially with competitive integrity and protecting and educating our athletes, not just at the collegiate level, but also pro level. Internet online gambling is truly the wild, wild west. Not understanding how to regulate or police it, there are many loopholes and ways for people to gamble illegally on websites because of those difficulties. And then today, some of the deeper dives that I'm going to take in just a few minutes is discussing video game betting, esports, and social casino and social games. All of these new emerging trends of gaming and gambling convergence that are occurring online. Bingo and charitable gaming. Charitable gaming, casino nights have been made legal in North Carolina recently. And yes, when you go to church bingo and you're putting down money and you're getting, something of value in return, then that is gambling as well. And then even those formal poker nights where maybe you have that weekly or monthly poker night where you go with your friends, you are still, getting something in return when you're putting money down. The bets among friends that occur, I've been on the playground with my daughter and heard, kids making bets over video games, to, those office pools, and some of the questions around fantasy sports, and is that gambling? Because they claim it's a game of skill. Well, it's interesting to know that many of the top fantasy sports providers were poised and waiting to help the many states with their sports betting to provide, that option to people through their online platforms, and were ready and willing to say that they were gambling.
Allison?
Yes.
I do have a couple questions that have come through before you move on.
Sure.
And I'll start with this first one. And they're asking if currently sweepstakes were legal in North Carolina.
So it goes back and forth, but just in the last month, a court ruling has upheld the initial legislation again, saying that they are illegal. So the problem is that the court continues to be challenged by the software industries, and it's gone back and forth for quite some time. Some games, yes, have been illegal since the beginning, but the software industry continues to change the games and add in games of skill and claim that they're not gambling. So there was some confusion and kind of a gray area there, but the recent ruling is that you're saying that sweepstakes are illegal. So part of the issue is here you have a law and you have a court upholding that law, but then you have to actually then have someone go out in the community and present and be able to shut down those facilities. So I know that the alcohol law enforcement has 8 people that are on the illegal gambling task force. So that's a lot of gambling establishments throughout the entire state for 8 people. But really, it's having those local jurisdictions decide that they want to shut them down. And one county we just read about had 22 sweepstakes parlors. So, and they were giving them, or not 22, I'm sorry, they were giving them till the 22nd to shut them down, but they had quite a few sweepstakes parlors in their county. So, I mean, it'll take some time and energy for those local jurisdictions or the alcohol law enforcement officers to get them shut down.
Thank you. And I do have one other from Deanna, and she was referencing as far as you giving the definition for gambling. Many everyday tasks are also gambling: trying a new recipe, investing in the stock market, gardening, and there are many factors that it could impact the outcome. And she's wanting you to talk more about how brains might be hardwired to want to gamble and the threshold that changes living life from becoming a process addiction. And this may be something that you go into later, so I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, and just to start, I think that we can say that life is a gamble, but here the difference is, Menor Chappelle is the company that I work for that contracts with the state of North Carolina, and I'm the prevention coordinator for NCTHHS. But what we say is we are gambling neutral, okay? I'm not trying to tell anybody not to gamble or gamble. I'm trying to tell people that there are risks associated with gambling, and that there are people that are at a higher risk to become an individual living with gambling disorder. And it's important to understand those risks, and that's part of why we have prevention, because we want to provide information about those risks associated with it and understand that we need to take healthy risks. And when those risks become unhealthy is when we need to be able to attribute and understand when it is becoming unhealthy and when we may need to reach out for help. And the second part of that question, gambling disorder, and as you see, it goes in perfectly to this slide. Gambling disorder in the DSM-5 is, considered an addiction rooted in the brain, similar to substance use disorder. So that's very important to know that it is an addiction. And it also, at one point, we've changed some of the language around this. We want to destigmatize the language that we're using, but also, changing the language and to fit more in line with mild, moderate to severe, and understanding the different types of gambling disorder that could occur. So as you see here, to have 4 or 5 of these signs or symptoms, you would have mild. Then 6 to 7 is moderate, and then 8+ is severe. And if many of the people on the call today are providers or prevention specialists, in the substance use disorder world, when you're looking at some of these signs and symptoms, you probably can see some similarities. The betting with increasing amounts of money to get that same feeling, feeling very restless, or irritable when you're not gambling, and that preoccupation where you're constantly thinking about that next gambling opportunity or how you're going to get money to actually have that next gambling opportunity, because at some point you run out of money. You're trying to quit maybe, and you've had some unsuccessful attempts. You start to feel distressed. Chasing losses is really a big deal when considering the possibility of someone living with a gambling disorder. What this is, someone may typically when you start to gamble, you experience an early big win, which has a lot to do with the law of averages and why the gambling industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, is because eventually you're going to stop winning and you're going to lose a lot. And someone living with a gambling disorder will believe that their next big win is just around the corner, and they'll continue to gamble and gamble until, panic becomes, their daily routine. And unfortunately, what can also occur is there can be a lot of lying associated with this. Spouses many times do not even know that it's occurring. It can disrupt relationships. It can disrupt work or school. Someone's going to gamble instead of attending class or instead of going to work. And then they start borrowing money and possibly stealing, going into a lot of debt. So the financial devastation begins to become a load on them, and then the health issues that occur because of that. So when you're thinking about substance use disorder, I think the biggest difference is that gambling disorder is really hidden. You can't see it on someone or smell it on someone. And a lot of times it's very accepted because families can benefit from money associated with winning. And we are really, have become even more so a culture that appreciates gambling and, sees it as of good value in an activity that we engage in. So I want to also just give you a little bit more information about different types of people that could be living with a gambling disorder, and maybe some of the different activities or actions they could be occurring in. So for example, our action gamblers, really are the ones that tend to play for the rush of the game, or be the big shot. For the most part, they tend to be males. And we have, we found this through our helpline calls as well. And our action gamblers could have a longer career. It's more about the competition. They could be putting down $500 on a poker game night to upstage friends. They are the ones that, tend to commit more crimes, to get more money to gamble. And, money is, really that relapse. And honestly, they can also become escape gamblers because, they're starting to get in well over their head and they're starting to get into debt. Maybe their spouse has left them because of the gambling. So they start to gamble to escape. So there also are escape gamblers. And this is the person that will go to the casino and they'll, sit at the slot machine for hours on end and maybe only play penny or quarter slots, and they're doing this and they're gambling longer, but what they're doing is trying to avoid something in their life. Maybe it is, it's very emotionally charged. It could be a death of a loved one. It could be a child moving out of the house. It could be divorce. There's multiple reasons, and these tend to be female.
Hang tight, everyone. It looks like maybe, Allison, can you hear us? I'm not sure everyone can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. Okay, so that was a little bit about gambling disorder. I'm now going to discuss a little bit more about and go into comorbidity and maybe talking a little bit about addiction switching here. So those from the substance use disorder world can get a feel and an understanding of why it's important to also incorporate problem gambling prevention and treatment into your work. So this was a study done, and this study continues to occur. But this was a study done by the National Epidemiologic Survey on alcohol and related conditions. And I'm sure you've seen this before, probably in your work. But it's really important to make note that at the time, gambling disorder, they called them pathological gamblers. So individuals that could have pathological gambling, were 73% of them were associated with alcohol use disorder. There 60% nicotine dependence, 50% mood disorder, 41% anxiety disorder, and then 61% personality disorder. So you can see here, there's not just comorbidity with nicotine and substance use, but also with mental health. So when we're working with individuals and we're deciding on a approach for prevention, we need to take into consideration the entire well-being of the individual and realize that there is addiction switching. I was told a story from a collegiate recovery counselor that they were working with someone in recovery, and they came in and were having a conversation and said they were doing a great job in recovery, but that they now had, in one episode of gambling, spent their whole paycheck. So there you can see, and I'm sure you've heard this, addiction is addiction is addiction. So it's important for us to understand that there is addiction switching, and it could also be this comorbidity where two or more of these conditions are occurring at the same time. But I also think it's really important to understand that each individual is different. So just because someone is presenting themselves with problem gambling does not mean that they're going to have all these different disorders. But what it could mean is they may have one. And also it's very important to say that they may not have alcohol use disorder. However, there is that large chance, as you see here. Are there any questions at this point?
I do not have any questions that have come through yet, so you're good. If anyone has any connection issues, I think I can hear the same thing that the audience is, but if anyone for some reason cannot hear Allison, please let me know.
Thank you. So let's make an even deeper connection here between substance use disorder and gambling disorder. So adverse childhood experiences include 10 common childhood traumas, from abuse to neglect to household dysfunction. And the first initial study of this was done in the 1990s of over 17,000 people. And really, the results were significantly overwhelming. Individuals who scored, and let me pull up the slide here. Okay, so individuals who scored 3 or more ACEs had a significant increase in health problems, from mental health to physical health to addictions. But as you see here, if they go up to 5, and then in some of the reading that I did, individuals with 6 or more ACEs had a reduced life expectancy of up to 20 years. So really what this means is that ACEs are really the biggest determinants of health and social well-being to date. And this toxic stress has a huge impact on brain development, social development. It compromises our immune system, and can lead to substance misuse, problem gambling, and other unhealthy coping behaviors. So really, in the prevention world, and the CDC actually just released a 2019 prevention report, giving the prevention world suggested strategies to help combat and prevent adverse childhood experiences, but also build resilience in our youth. So as you can see here, this is really a big deal, and I'm sure many of you have attended trainings on this, but I'm taking it as a part of my role, a part of my goal, to help join multidisciplinary teams to work on this issue and come up with ideas as a community to figure out where we can use our time and effort to be able to prevent some of these instances from occurring, or build resilience in youth. And this is really connecting not just mental health, not just addictions, but physical health as well. And the proof is in the data. So, and if many of you have not seen the movie, the documentary Resilience yet, I suggest that you, attempt to view that. There's been a lot of viewings across the state of North Carolina. So, comorbidity and adverse childhood experiences, that is really what's connecting us. So, and to give you a little bit more about ACEs and gambling disorder, this study was done at a Veterans Administration gambling treatment program. As you can see, there are various types of trauma those engaged in this treatment program incurred. But the biggest thing that I want you to see is that 91.5% of participants reported that trauma occurred in childhood. And when we're talking about our veterans and PTSD, we know that our veterans are experiencing PTSD for various reasons. So this is quite impactful to see that the percentage of people and the type of childhood trauma that they endured. This is another study that I found that showed that overall that those living with a gambling disorder were 4 times more likely than controls to have emotional, verbal, or sexual abuse in their life. And then this other study, and it's important, I feel, to find various studies that support, various hypotheses. But this study found that 3 or more types of ACEs were more than 3. Who were experiencing 3 or more types of ACEs were more than 3 times as likely to report disordered gambling, as those to compare to with no history of childhood adversity. And it's also important in that study that they found emotion dysregulation mediated that relationship between ACEs and disordered gambling. So that goes back to resilience, prevention, and treatment efforts. So let's talk more now about youth and problem gambling. So states do not get any federal funding for problem gambling, and there is very little money for research. Some jurisdictions, continents have more money than others. Canada and Australia and a few others seem to have a little bit more money and are focused a little bit more on gambling research. But what is significant is that they're finding that youth, and when I'm talking about youth, I'm talking about ages 12 to 17, that they have more gambling related problems than any other age cohort. And just look at the statistics here of just how many of the kids are gambling, the percentage. And, I've read research that says, as many as 80% of 12-year-olds have gambled. So the various studies and the various percentages, it's just showing that the lack of awareness and understanding that gambling is even an addiction, and the lack of understanding that, when our youth engage in possible addictive behaviors at a younger age, that the chances of them becoming addicted to it increase, but also, already exhibiting serious patterns of someone living with a gambling disorder or being at risk or returning to a serious gambling problem. So we're not just talking about prevention for youth. We're also talking about figuring out ways to deliver treatment to youth. So recent research, and something I've read as early as last month, gambling behaviors are really created in the teenage years. And the recent research I saw said that by the age of 20, your gambling behavior is created. So it's very important and vital that we get to youth earlier and earlier to give them information and education surrounding the issues of gambling disorder. And then to talk about comorbidity again, when we're talking about students that are at high risk, there's a possibility that they are also engaging in other high-risk unhealthy behaviors. Tobacco use, drinking heavily, and possibly using illegal drugs, or maybe even having a low GPA, or driving under the influence. These are some of the other signs that could be occurring. So what's happening in North Carolina? If you look here, you'll see that specifically, people that are gambling in North Carolina, 9th and 12th graders, gambling at about the same rate, males, more than females, and then, it seems as though in North Carolina, although special populations, you'll see in many cases, people of ethnicity typically exhibit more problem gambling than Caucasians. However, there is, this goes across all socioeconomic, ethnic, sex, it goes across every line. Anyone can be at risk for developing a gambling disorder. So as you see here, these are the type of gambling activities that are going on, or the types of, grade levels and the types of individuals that are gambling in North Carolina. So what about Stack Deck? And I'm going to talk more about that. Some of our results, when we do our pre and post surveys, you'll see here that close to 12% of the middle school and high school students who participated in the pre and post test, they were having some type of psychological, financial, legal consequence that was impairing their ability to go to school, or if they work after school, participate in working. So that's very significant that there could be, on the continuum there, when you're talking about problem gambling, when you looked at the gambling disorder, there is a continuum, but it is becoming a problem for students. And then when you're looking at the types of gambling behaviors, here 52% reported gambling, at least once in the last 3 months, gambled at least once monthly, and then played for money weekly. So I want you to pay attention to that statistic. And this is from 2019, and this is from 2011. So kids are gambling. You've seen the national statistics, and now you've seen some statistics from our work with Stack Deck that kids are gambling, and they are exhibiting some problem gambling. So we've talked about youth. What about college age students? So this was a study that we funded at Campbell University. And what was done here is there was a survey of 278 responses. Well, there was 300 surveys, but 278 full responses on the survey. So they found out 78% had no problems with gambling, 20% had some problems with gambling, but 17% had mild to moderate gambling disorder and 2% severe gambling disorder. So that's pretty significant. If you think about the percentage of college students exhibiting problem gambling, 17% is very high. And this certainly should be a public health concern, and one of the reasons why we also offer grants to colleges and universities. It's a very important piece of work that was done by Dr. Tracy Pope. So if you also see here the types of gambling opportunities that these participants were engaged in, lottery tickets, again, scratch-off tickets, that's really not surprising. Again, being the most popular game worldwide, very accessible. And even if they're not of legal age, parents, friends, people, buying these tickets for them to, engage in gambling. Sports betting, very common on college campuses, illegal in many ways, and sometimes there are illegal rings that can be established that are nationwide, which occur on college campuses. Some casino gambling, the simulated gambling behavior, which is some of that video game and social gaming. So the gambling behaviors for the youth that engaged in our pre and post test for Stack Deck, as you can see here, lottery, obviously they're underage, so someone's buying those lottery tickets and instant win tickets for them. Slot machines, we think that has something to do with a lot of the video terminals that you'll see in gas stations, probably even sweepstakes parlors. I'm assuming kids, you see a lot of these just sitting there, and many are not supposed to pay out, but they do. And there's no one monitoring them to see if there's someone of an underage individual participating in them. Horse and dog racing, internet gambling, games of skill. These are all types of activities, that our youth are engaging in. So what does it mean for youth today to grow up in a world with the largest amount of legalized gambling, and the fact that it's now available day and night, not just on the internet, but also from, their mobile phone? And then you add in the acceptability of it, how media glamorizes it. You see it in movies where, you're seeing the person losing, you're seeing the person winning and having a great time. Casinos can advertise, lottery can advertise. And now in many states like New Jersey, who've legalized sports betting and online sports betting, there are sports betting advertising everywhere, from billboards to trains, to the radio, to pop-ups on your phone. So a really high acceptability of it, where parents are buying tickets for their kids, friends are participating together. They're all engaging in these activities with little to understanding of the harms. There's less money for prevention, there's less money for treatment, and there's just a lack of understanding. But here, there's an earlier engagement, and it's earlier than drugs. And what we said at the beginning of the presentation, about gambling disorder, is that it's an addiction rooted in the brain, similar to substance use disorder. So that's very important to understand, that it's important for us to raise awareness, continue to find ways to increase funds. Our national nonprofit is working to lobby to bring awareness to the fact that we need federal funds to be able to increase the awareness and prevention and treatment. So before I move on, I just want to make sure, are there any other questions at this point?
I did actually have one in reference to cultural factors that might influence whether a Latina youth would gamble, and if there are cultural appropriate campaigns that specifically address the variants there.
So if you come to our SureBet training, which is a much longer training, we talk a lot about special populations, and specifically, some of those special populations, we talk about ways in which to reach out to them. And I would suggest, if you want to reach out to me offline, I would be happy to give you that information and possibly even direct you to that training, or send you to a provider that can give you even more information. On that, on our website, we have a link for Spanish. So individuals that are not English speaking and speak Spanish can go and click on that link to find out information about our services and problem gambling. We just did that last year. But yes, there are definitely cultural differences and higher prevalence rates among special populations, and specifically you're talking about different ethnicities, minorities, young males. Maybe it's people sending money back home to loved ones. Maybe it's a first generation, American here that maybe speak little to no English, and they see it as a way to make money. So yes, there are variances and the prevalence rates, and there are different ways to reach out to different populations. So please reach out to me offline to get that information.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to shift gears, and this is where I'm going to do that deeper dive, where we're talking about gaming and gambling convergence. And the gambling world does a lot of studies, and the gaming world does too, and they provide a lot of information available to the public to talk about the different things that they're doing to engage with one another. So a lot of the information I'm providing you today, I have some research to back it up, but a lot of the information I'm providing you today is actually coming from the gaming and gambling world. So, you know, I grew up with Nintendo. I played Lode Runner and Where in the World's Carmen Sandiego. And I didn't go on to the go mobile with games. You know, I kind of stayed stationary. But, you know, can someone guess, if you want to go to your chat box, what year do you think that games went mobile? Does anyone have a guess?
I have 1996, 89, 90, 2000.
Okay, very good. So the person that did, you know, closer to the, I guess, was the person in the 90s there, or was it somebody earlier? But you guys are pretty close. You know, Nintendo Game Boy dominated the mobile gaming market for 2 decades. So, you know, that handheld device. And then, you know, Nintendo DS and dual screen is introduced in 2000, and then, you know, PlayStation Portable. So you had these ability to take games, you know, wherever you went. But how have games changed today? If you, this is another one that I want you to type in the box. How do you think games are different, you know, in 2020 compared to the past?
I have some responses. More accessible, multiplayer, easy access. The streaming is now live with social aspects. You can also pay for games and earn points, and very interactive. So a lot of good responses here coming through.
Yeah, and you're all accurate. So the iPhone really changed the way that we play games. And, you know, long are gone are the days when you go in the store and you purchase your $60 video game and you go home and you put it and you play it. Now you can log on to video games anywhere and play them from anywhere. And yes, you can be engaged in social interaction. Interesting story, a friend of mine, her son had a friend over, and his friend went home so they could play video games together from their separate houses. So social interaction is key. There's a lot of peer pressure online, and really these online communities that are developing, you know, where people are having, it's becoming a community. They're having these shared interactions, you know, the same games, the graphics, the storylines. They're creating relationships. They're getting a lot of this fulfillment online that you know, we typically would from, you know, our face-to-face interactions, or our, not the virtual communities, but our real communities. You know, and you can play with people that you don't even know. And you can join teams and play together to win big money in esports. And you can play games through social media. So, you know, if we're talking about social media, it has been compared to slot machines. You know, those rewards that we get, the likes that we get, keep us coming back. And the games that are now being, you know, played there, you know, keep us there. So in-app purchases, this is a huge change, you know. A lot of these games that you can play online, or maybe a video game that you purchase, that's not the one purchase that you'll make. There are a lot of opportunities to make in-app purchases online to continue to build your team, change your character, move to a different level. So there's all these opportunities now to spend a lot of money, and it's working because it's becoming $1 billion industry. And, you know, with a lot of these video games, there's a new game out each year. So if you've already spent tons of money on one game, you know, the next year a new game will come out. And of course, you know, with the changing world and ability to collect information on individuals, there are now actual gaming employees who engage in games daily to keep them fresh and familiar, and individualize them to keep people coming back and playing. So this is all happening, but how many people is it affecting? And how many people are engaging, in social media to get to these games or even playing these games? Well, I think we have to first talk about our own just phone use. What do you do? Think of your own patterns of how you use your cell phone. Is it the first thing that you check when you get up in the morning? How many times a day do you check your phone? And, I've heard people saying they hear ghost chimes or ghost rings because they think their phone has beeped and it actually hasn't. And then the number of people that are engaging in social media and the number of times that people actually visit social media. Facebook, 70%, 6% of Facebook users at least visit once a day. But then, the number of Americans that own mobile phones and play games on their devices is quite significant. We're really becoming an online world, and there's a lot of good to that. Being able to communicate, being able to reach out, being able to get information. But, there also comes some cons to that. And part of that is the online gaming world. So there's been a lot of discussion in the gambling world about millennials, because millennials are not spending the same amount of money as other generations on gambling, and they don't even like the same traditional types of gambling opportunities that other generations enjoy. Millennials, they want to go and they want to spend money on an experience. They want to have the great dinner. They want to go to the great club. But more than anything, they want to play a game of skill and compete with others and socially interact with other people. So because of studies that have been done, Nevada has actually passed legislation to include video game elements in slot machines going forward. So in the years to come, casinos could look very different. Casinos make most of their money off of slot machines. So the slot machines of tomorrow could look like video games. And there's also a reason why a lot of the land-based casinos are also going through large construction projects, because they're reinventing themselves, large conference centers or areas where they can host large video game tournaments, or what's called esports. So for those of you that are not aware of what esports are or is, it's a way for people to engage in games online and compete against others. And these are video games. For example, I'm sure many of you have heard of Fortnite. Many youth engage in Fortnite. This particular player is quite popular, and at this time, when this picture snapshot was taken, they had 5 million followers. So as you can see here, this year, as of January 2nd, they had, this particular player had over 22.4 million followers. So these events can take place, these esport tournaments can take place in venues where you go, like for example, we're in the greater Raleigh area, so there was an esports tournament at the Raleigh conference, the big Raleigh conference center in the area. But they're also streamed online on a lot of platforms, and you can go to these, and many different times and see these players playing, and they're really becoming the stars of the future. They're football players. They're the big stars that kids are looking to and idolizing. And of course, industries are catching on of this, and these tournament champions can win, upwards of millions of dollars. And the international data too broke the record with the largest prize of close to $25 million. So no longer, these tournaments being broadcast, and some of the viewerships are more than, popular TV shows. But this, the esports industry is really valued at going to be $1 billion opportunity going forward. So, when we're talking about sports betting, no legislation has really included esports. However, there is a betting platform for esports, and it's legal in some jurisdictions. I've seen several interviews with the CEO of Unicorn, and they have a lot of people engaged that understand how to attract millennials, how to even attract people that don't know anything about esports, but want to engage them in betting on esports. So this is the future of the gambling world. What is research showing us about esports? And this particular piece of research of sports bettors, showed that those that bet on esports are gambling much more and on many different types of products. They have higher problem gambling severity scores and are significantly younger than the sports bettor, which that makes perfect sense because it's video games. It's these esports stars that are young people that are winning millions of dollars. So it would make sense that they're attracting a younger audience, although I know that viewership also skews to, an older demographic as well who enjoy video games and watching video games. So this should cause us, some pause when we're considering our prevention, treatment, and additional research that needs to occur, because this is an unregulated environment that's going on here, and we need to pay close attention to the social and economic fallout from it. So we have to take another step in a little deeper here into the video game world and start to talk about some of these in-app purchases. So we're talking about loot boxes here. And for those of you that have never engaged in a video game, this is actually, if you see here to the right, it's an actual box that's presented. It's a prize of an undisclosed value. You have to make the decision to purchase it, to get something in return, put something down on something that you don't know what it is in hopes of getting something in return. And there was legislation actually introduced into Congress this year that didn't go anywhere, that raised concerns over youth and loot boxes, and what this type of embedded gambling, what kind of culture it was creating online for our youth, and then, is this behavior grooming them for future gambling? So sometimes when they open a loot box, or sometimes they just go and purchase a skin. And a skin is really just a cosmetic item. It'll change the appearance of the character, maybe a new outfit, or it changes the appearance of the weapon. And this is where I want to go back to that online community and peer pressure, where kids are engaging and they see these other really cool skins, and they've actually created rare skins. And those of you know about the scarcity principle, if there's less of something, we want it. So there's a lot of this peer pressure online to figure out, where do you buy more of those rare skins? How do you get them, and who looks the coolest online? And these skins can be bought, traded, or sold. But guess what? Skins can also be gambled. So this is where I want to turn the screen back over to Amanda. And Amanda, if you could show the video game skin betting video at this point.
Yeah, give me just a second.
Like me. That report from Norman Hermont. From taxi driver to sub. It could be a growing addiction, potentially stunting the development.
Well,
I think you jumped ahead there.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened. Let's see.
If you can go back to the original link, if you can't, it's fine. I can describe what happens in the storyline.
A growing addiction, potentially stunting the development of children. One doctor uses the term digital heroin to describe the compulsion to stare into screens for hours.
Yeah, I think that's a different video clip.
Okay. Let's see.
And I want to thank everyone for being so patient with this. We attempted to show the video from my screen and something going on, I'm guessing, with my laptop and won't allow the sound to play. There we go. That's it.
Okay.
How much do you know about online video games? If you've never heard of Counter-Strike, League of Legends or Twitch like me, you're likely to be one of those for whom today's online video games are a mystery. But for millions of Australians, online gaming is a big part of their lives. And for some, those games are also a pathway to gambling. Worldwide video game gambling is a multi-billion-dollar business. It's almost completely unregulated and many underage Australians are taking a punt. Norman Hermont reports.
Okay, team, follow my command. In teenage bedrooms across Australia, there's another world where online video games rule the night.
This is Counter-Strike. So basically we have, at the moment I'm playing Deathmatch. So you have two teams, players join a team and you kill the people on the other team.
Games like this one, called Counter-Strike, have millions of players around the world. For many of them, like 18-year-old Jordan Bruce, the intrigue soon becomes not the game, but the gambling that happens on the side.
It's very wide open. Anyone can bet. Like a 2-year-old who knew how to use a computer could bet. There's all you have to do is click a checkbox that says I'm 18, over 18 years old, and you can go gambling straight away.
Gambling in games like Counter-Strike doesn't involve real money initially. Instead, players can win keys that reveal digital prizes, mostly different weapons used in the games. They can also buy those prizes, known as skins. And skins gambling can be an irresistible lure.
It was actually quite surreal that, that I'd have these skins in game, but I was making quite a bit of money. It seemed like the stakes were high, but they were.
18-year-old Nason Pybus was another Counter-Strike player attracted to skins gambling while still underage. He quickly found out there's no shortage of ways skins can be won or lost.
There's the coin flips. There's actually betting on professional matches. There's also like big pots, so people put an amount in and then it's randomly drawn who wins. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can gamble these skins.
And make no mistake, you can cash out by trading in your skins for real money in a real account.
Oh my God, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
This is what drives the interest in skins gambling. The hype of big-name players winning big in online videos that attract hundreds of thousands of views. The curiosity is intensified by live streaming of skins gambling on the hugely popular gaming website, Twitch, which has 100 million visits a month.
It's fun to watch them, bet high stakes and $1,000 bets and things like that.
We just had that feeling of we were winning, so what's the point in stopping? I guess this is where the kind of addiction started coming in, because I liked the feeling of winning and I didn't like losing.
For Jordan Bruce, last year when he was 17, his luck turned against him. There was nothing to stop him going on the site opskins.com to buy more skins to keep gambling.
I'll just, go and take my dad's credit card and start gambling. Go on OP skins, buy the skins, and start gambling those. At first, it started off small, maybe $10 transactions, but then it just started getting bigger and bigger because I just had that urge.
Jordan, where did this all finish up?
So it finished on $1,800. in debt from my dad's credit card.
Did you have any idea of what Jordan was really up to when he was playing these games?
No, none whatsoever. The first inkling that there was something going on was when I was going through doing all the banking, and I started to notice all these charges on there.
It's all taking place with almost no regulation.
The regulation for internet gambling actually was created before Facebook even existed. It doesn't discuss mobile apps, mobile gaming. There have been several reviews looking at bringing it up to date, and none of these have discussed the concept of gambling within video games at all.
But when my 13-year-old kid comes and tells me that he's betting skins online, that raises alarm bells for me.
Damn it! Are you serious? All right, so we're down $150 so far.
It's the same around the world. Raul Sood is a tech startup veteran.
It's going to be a first championship team here as well.
His Seattle-based company, Unicorn, is one of the world's leading sites for legal betting on esports, professional video game competition.
Convincing everyone that they're able to do this.
What do you think really needs to happen here?
We really need, before it gets out of control, it needs to be regulated, right? It has to be regulated soon.
For its part, the government doesn't have clear answers. The Department of Communication says the Interactive Gambling Act 2001 prohibits online gambling services, but it also says networked computer games are not prohibited even when they are played for money, because computer games are primarily regarded as games of skill. Since Jordan Bruce's credit card shock, his family has learned all about skins gambling and the videos that entice so many.
I think one of the reasons we're even sitting here talking to you is to let parents know that this world even exists. They sit and they watch these games on the internet. They watch them on YouTube. They see these big high flyers overseas putting money on trading skins, gambling skins, and they're winning big money. Huge amounts of money, and anybody can go and actually look at those sites.
And anybody, says Jordan Bruce, can get drawn in.
It's real money. It's not just, virtual items in a game. It's actual real money going in towards this. And I came to this wanting to warn people that there is nothing good that comes out of gambling. In the end, you're just going to end up like me.
Thank you, Vermont.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to turn you back to presenter, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for being patient with us.
Okay, so everyone should see my screen again. So let's talk about some of the concerns, not just with esports, but video game betting. Obviously with skin betting, that's betting. But when we're talking about some of this in betting gambling, it's still closely, mirroring the same principles, same psychological principles that are used in casinos, in games of chance. And they can, play the game of skill card as much as they want. But it is gambling activity. There's a lot of threats to competitive integrity. I briefly mentioned them with sports betting. The threats to competitive integrity in esports is, it's an unregulated environment right now, and there's no governing body. So what do they even do if someone is cheating in hopes of maybe getting money from someone that's asked them to cheat? And the high frequency betting. So when we're talking about high frequency betting, we're talking about being able to continually bet like you do in a slot machine every 6 seconds. Maybe it's on a skin, maybe you're betting on an esports tournament and you're betting within the game. Unicorn is offering a lot of this, in-play betting where you can bet often. And there's a lot of dangers around that because that can become highly addictive. And then, of course, the underage betting, which we know is occurring online, and then all of the issues that we've talked about around youth problem gambling. So there's also another bit to this, which is similar to video games, but it's the social gaming world. So you play these social games through a social media platform. So maybe you're going online and on Facebook and you're playing Angry Birds, and you're playing, because, the social media platform makes it discoverable. And, through analytics, and big data, maybe this particular game, you play it once and they know that this is a game that you'll continue to play. So they target you to figure out how to keep you playing that game, and they're able to figure that out through analytics. And then once they launch a game, if they see that it's reaching a specific monetary value, they're doubling or tripling the team to keep people engaged. And of course, the free to play model is important, but also they make money off of in-app purchases. So many of you have heard of the game Candy Crush, I'm sure. So you mix your max sweeps, a combination of 3 or more to gain points, and it was developed in 2012, but look for how much it was sold for to Call of Duty, $5.9 billion. So, their revenues are coming from these in-app purchases. So people are going online, and, some will never make an in-app purchase, but many are. And, they're being targeted through these heat maps, and people are, the ones that they know that'll make in-app purchases are even targeted even more. So outside of social games, there's another avenue to this. It's social casino games, which mirror casino games, except, they're free to play and you're not getting any actual money in return. Okay, so you're downloading a game. Like I downloaded and played Slatomia, and I was able to play for free but get virtual coins in return. And obviously, they asked me to brag about it on Facebook 5 times, and they repeatedly asked me to make in-app purchases. So they're making money through in-app purchases, obviously. Virtual coins, this online world has value. The digital goods economy has value to people who are engaging in these games. But also it's an excellent marketing tool for casinos. It's a larger audience. So think about everybody that went to Las Vegas last year, and think about 1 month that people are online playing these games. They're 3.5 times bigger. So it's a wonderful marketing tool to engage people in games, get them excited about them, and then drive them to land-based casinos through incentives. And, a large study of over, I think 6 years of 8 major casinos showed that there is an uptick because of the marketing that is going along with social casino games. So what about youth? So obviously it's unregulated. Youth can get on it very easily and they can participate in these simulated gambling games, but they're also more apt to go and gamble. But what's happening when they go to gamble? These youth who are engaging in social games and also gambling are exhibiting significant rates of moderate to high gambling disorder. This is, and in contrast, if you look, the teens are not doing the social games, but just doing monetary gambling, still exhibiting some degree of problem gambling, but not at the rate of people that are engaging. And what are the concerns? Obviously, it's how the money are made through in-app purchases, how you're engaging people and targeting them. And I encourage you to watch a video that was a PBS special, I believe, about a woman who was engaging in a social casino game and lost thousands, and how the industry is actually, within one use, they're able to know if someone is going to become addicted to the game, and they are targeting them, which, obviously is very unethical from my standpoint as a prevention coordinator. And these social casino games are unregulated, and they have these huge embellished payouts and large bonuses, which will give people the sense of control, believing that if they walk into the casino that they're going to make that kind of money, when in actuality they aren't. Another part of our longer training is discussing the odds and understanding, slot machines, for example. So these games can also be a way of escape and can be very engrossing. So when we're talking about escape gamblers and we're talking about women, remember, it was less about the money and more about escaping and getting away from whatever problem in their life was causing them problems. And then, can these games be a gateway to gambling? Can they trigger those people living in recovery? All of these are concerns in an unregulated market. So for the last bit here, I'm going to dive in and talk about the North Carolina Problem Gambling Program, and then I hope I have enough time for questions at the end. So our total outreach, you see here our numbers of exhibits and speaking engagements for 2019. Our providers assisted us with this, and I engaged in a lot of these speaking engagements as well. But why we're here today is to talk about our mini grants as well, and Stack Deck specifically. We do it better than anyone in the entire world, and it's because we use a model where we offer grants and train the trainer. So Stack Deck, and then college and university outreach, and then the college and university outreach that we do. It's grants up to $5,000 every year, and we ask for screening, outreach, and policy implementation. And a lot of times that's involving themselves in Problem Gambling Awareness Month, attending our trainings, and participating in National Screening Day. Shaw University, this is an example of a program that they did. They really engaged students to do trainings across campus, to engage their student population in conversations about gambling and problem gambling. They did PSAs and poster competitions. And here they took their entire team out for a gambling, or not a gambling, I'm sorry, for a bowling night. So they all can engage in bowling activity and kind of celebrate their year-long program that included a gambling policy for the campus. So Stack Deck, we offer grants up to $5,000 to middle schools, high schools, and community organizations, and it's evidence-based. We ask that participants participate in pre and post surveys. We do a train-to-train model where most of our grantees come to summer school at NCTTA Summer School, and we offer full scholarships. And they come and learn all about problem gambling and also Stack Deck. We provide ongoing technical support and do site visits to make sure that the program is being implemented in the way that it should. And we also ask the schools to do outreach and awareness. There are 5 lessons associated with Stack Deck. The first is the house edge, and talking about the law of average and how gambling is very different than older forms of gambling, because now it's really about a commercial enterprise and making money. We talk about problem gambling. Gambling fallacies tend to be one of the most popular lessons because it's really breaking down a lot of these myths about gambling and about gambling activities, and really showing that there's a mathematical reason that the gambling industry is making so much money. And then we also have 2 lessons on good decision making, and then ways to overcome barriers to decision making and problem solving, and then a bonus lesson where they participate in a game. So it's 6 lessons, about 35 to 45 minutes each. We also ask that take-home pages are sent either email or taken to parents, so parents can engage in conversation about the activities that their kids are doing at school around, problem gambling. And then, what kind of impact is this making? In the education prevention world, we want to know that there is actually an impact. And the students that engage in pre and post surveys, as you can see here, more participants believe that gambling had negative consequences after taking the Stack Deck curriculum. And then the percentage of respondents who reported harm from gambling far outweighed its benefits, increased, before to after the intervention. So, the gambling attitudes did change. And then knowledge. If you look at this, the changes in gambling knowledge of participants for each of the 10 items that make up the knowledge score, changed. The largest occurred in the age groups with the highest problem gambling rate. Many didn't realize that youth have the highest problem gambling rate. And then the smallest, of course, was with that gambling can be addictive, because many participants already were aware of that before. Beliefs about gambling. So I talking about that being a myth buster, many people who gamble tend to hold these beliefs and certain values and attitudes that think that they can increase their probability of winning through doing something specific. And what these sections do is break down some of these beliefs and then give them the reality that just because a rural area in a small convenience store has never had a winning ticket doesn't mean that the likelihood of that happening there is great because they've never had it before. And then, gambling frequency. The statistician that's engaged in doing this work is always very excited to do the pre and post surveys because, what you can see here is that more than half the participants, engaged in at least one gambling behavior. But if you look at the measurements, all 3 gambling behavior measurements decreased after each intervention, and being statistically significant. So we are from pre to post making changes, not just in attitudes, not just in beliefs, but also behaviors. So this is one of the stack deck programs, Fayetteville State University. They have a 21st century learning program where they have youth coming over the summer. They had 19 students engaged in the curriculum, and they did PSAs and posters, and they did this really big outreach event where community members came. They participated in gambling activities, but in order to get out of the room, they had to go through and see the problem gambling posters and also view the PSAs. I thought it was really well done. Here's a school in Murphy. Students are taught the curriculum, they engage in poster competitions, and then they send out press releases about problem gambling, about the helpline, and about Stack Deck to a readership of about 6,500. So I think instead of showing the last, it's just a clip of one of the PSAs, what I'd like to do is just make sure that there's time for questions because I know we're coming to an end here. So if there are any questions, I would love to hear them at this point. And of course, if you'd like to see our PSA, I'll be happy to, I'm sure that link can be put up as well. Students have done some great PSAs.
I don't have any questions coming through just yet, Allison, but I will certainly, we'll stay on a couple more minutes to see. We appreciate everyone participating today.
If you want to share that PSA to close, it's only a minute. So it's totally up to you.
Okay, well, I'll be glad to. Hold on just a second.
That might give some people some more time to think of questions if they have any.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having me today. And my contact information was on the slide at the end there. I'll be happy to take any questions now, or if you want to email me. And of course, please reach out to me if you'd like to get more training. We have some webinars coming up. I'd be happy to forward those along, but also, coming to our Stack Deck Train the Trainer session on March 5th and 6th at the Governor's Institute in Raleigh.
All right, sounds good. And again, just we will be sending out certificates as well as a survey for you guys to complete for us, and the documents from today's webinar will be posted on our help desk. But we appreciate everyone participating. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.